guess it was 6 years ago, I was chatting with a really good friend of mine about veganism and, how she was vegan, and she asked me a couple questions that I couldn't answer. She's like, well, what's the difference, one question in particular, what's the difference between your dog, the Reverend, who I absolutely adore, he's the best dog in the world, and a cow or a pig? And I didn't have an answer. I was like, well, I guess I'm vegan now. That totally makes sense. Like, there's really no difference between these animals. There's no reason to exploit one and love another. And, I couldn't go on living doing these horrible things to these wonderful creatures.
If I could become vegan, somebody who was a butcher, somebody who, somebody who was obsessed with charcuterie, and somebody who, served foie gras in the restaurant, if they could go vegan, I think that pretty much anybody could do it. Yeah. Except for that guy over there.
The Vegan Society was actually founded in November of 1944. There were always vegetarians who felt that drinking milk and eating eggs was not really a very vegetarian thing to do. And Donald Watson was one of the leading proponents of non-dairy vegetarianism. He wrote a long article in a magazine called The Vegetarian Messenger. That article is almost as true today as it was in 1944. As a result of that article, Donald Watson organised a meeting in London, in High Holborn, right opposite the tube station, and 7 people decided to form a society and asked Donald Watson to run it. The term vegan was created by Donald Watson and his wife Dorothy in about 1944. The story is, and I got this from his own daughter, so it must be true, the story is that he and Dorothy, his then fiancée, were at a dance, and they were talking about various ideas for names. And one of them said, let's take the beginning and end of vegetarian. And that gives us vegan. And the other one said, oh, that's a good name. And it's been the name of the Vegan Society ever since. He then produced a small newsletter called Vegan News. He wrote most of the material himself, but he also invited other people to make articles. And he mailed this out himself to his subscribers. And he very quickly got as many subscribers as he could handle, because it was wartime and there were not too many people able to do it, plus restrictions on travel and postage and so on. He talks about living on a farm and seeing and hearing a pig being killed, and that started him on the road to vegetarianism. And in due course, he realised that the logical end of vegetarianism is veganism. No exploitation of animals at all. He was 94 when he died. When I saw him, when I interviewed him, he was 92, and he could have passed for a man 20 years younger. And he still, every year on his birthday at that time, he used to walk up one of the local mountains and be photographed on the summit.
Auf das Thema Vegetarismus bin ich das erste Mal so richtig aufmerksam geworden, als wir in der Schule einen Film zum Thema Massentierhaltung gesehen haben. Und danach bin ich so langsam vegetarisch geworden, aber er ist auch nur so, dass ich das Fleisch aus dem Essen, was meine Mutter zubereitet hatte, raussortiert habe, weil ich das einfach so eklig fand, dass ich das nicht mehr in mir haben wollte. Und je mehr ich mich dann damit beschäftigt habe, desto klarer wurde mir, dass die logische Konsequenz für mich ist, vegan zu leben. Nachdem ich Vegetarierin geworden bin, habe ich mich immer weiter mit dem Thema beschäftigt und habe dann irgendwann festgestellt, dass nicht nur für die Produktion von Fleisch, sondern auch für Milch und für Eier Tiere ausgebeutet, gequält und getötet werden. Milchkühe zum Beispiel müssen regelmäßig Kälber bekommen, die ihnen dann direkt nach der Geburt entrissen werden. Und männliche Küken werden direkt nach dem Schlüpfen zerschreddert oder vergast, weil sie für die Eierproduktion einfach nicht gebraucht werden. Deswegen hat mir das dann irgendwann nicht mehr gereicht, einfach nur kein Fleisch zu essen und dann aber das Leid der Tiere für andere Produkte zu akzeptieren. Eine offene Befreiung ist ein Weg, um Tieren zu helfen, die heute in unserer Gesellschaft benutzt und ausgebeutet werden. Offene Befreiung deswegen, weil die Aktivisten, die diese Tiere befreien, sich dabei filmen, ihre Gesichter zeigen und offen dafür einstehen, dass sie diese Befreiung durchgeführt haben.
Ich habe keine Angst vor Strafverfolgung, ganz einfach, weil wir bei jedem Schritt, bei der Planung, uns ganz bewusst waren, was wir tun. Wir haben 6 Individuen aus einer Freilandhaltung rausgeholt, befreit. Ich glaube, dass die Befreiung legitim ist, besonders wenn eben ihr Leben bedroht ist, und es ist bei den Tieren der Fall, bei all den Tieren, und wir haben jetzt eben 6 davon gerettet.
Für uns ist es natürlich sehr schwierig, in so einen Betrieb zu gehen und nur in diesem Fall 6 Individuen mitnehmen zu können. Doch wir wissen, dass für diese Individuen sich alles verändert hat, und uns ist auch wichtig zu sehen, dass diese Tiere nicht durch andere ersetzt werden. Dem Betreiber wird nicht auffallen, dass diese Tiere fehlen. Also es sind tatsächlich 6 Leben gerettet worden, und gleichzeitig können wir damit erreichen, dass durch Aufklärung, dadurch, dass diese Bilder in die Öffentlichkeit gelangen, viel mehr Tiere vor diesem schrecklichen Schicksal befreit oder gerettet werden können.
Ich stelle mir das Leben schrecklich vor, was die Tiere in der Tierhaltung, in der Massentierhaltung oder in dem Fall auch in der Freilandhaltung durchleben. Sie werden geboren, um irgendeine Funktion für den Menschen zu erfüllen, und ihre Interessen werden nicht wahrgenommen, eben nur insoweit, wie sie produktiv für den Menschen sind. Und sobald das nicht mehr gegeben ist, werden sie dann umgebracht.
Ja, ich denke, uns ist auch wichtig, dass man sieht, dass diese Tiere dort als Waren wahrgenommen werden. Sie werden nicht als Individuen gesehen, sie sind dort Produkte, die nach ihrer Produktivität beurteilt werden. Und wir möchten zeigen, dass das ein falsches Bild ist, was wir haben, dass diese Tiere Individuen sind und dass es ethisch nicht zu rechtfertigen ist, diese Individuen auf diese Art und Weise auszubeuten und zu benutzen.
Sentience is the bedrock of ethics. So the ability to feel things is the reason we have moral systems and ethics, and the reason why we should show concern for others. Because other animals are sentient, because they can feel, and because pain, I expect, is felt no differently to a dog or a mouse or a chicken than it is to a human. Mammals and birds, at the very least, are subject to, they're vulnerable to traumatic events in their lives. They have psychology. They have the ability to be stressed, and if you stress them chronically, that is for long periods of time, they start to break down. They show abnormal behaviors. They show changes in their physiology. Their brains actually change, the brain chemistry. This is known from humans, but it's also shown in a number of animals through studies, long-term studies. Also, if you just look at animals who are kept for long periods in small cages, such as in factory farms, you see the change in the behavior. You see what scientists call behavioral stereotypies, that is, repetitive, functionless behaviors. A pig who wants to be stimulated and enjoy life, the only thing they have is a little cage they can't turn around in. The only thing they have is a bar in front of them. They will fixate on that bar for hours, day after day, because it's about the only thing that can stimulate them, albeit not very much stimulation. A red jungle fowl, which is essentially what a chicken is, evolved to be living out in jungles, flying up into trees at night to roost, and having a social structure, choosing their friends, choosing their mates, going one place to another by choice, by volition, like we do. put them in a cage, a crowded cage, and they can't do any of that. And so not surprisingly, we see abnormal behavior, high rates of death, high rates of illness.
Juni 2011 wurden 12 Aktivisten, Tierrechtsaktivisten in Spanien, darunter auch von Igualdad Animal, Animal Equality, verhaftet und in Polizeigewahrsam genommen. Diverses Material wurde beschlagnahmt, darunter auch wertvolles Material, Recherchen, die sie durchgeführt haben. Am Tag der Verurteilung hat der zuständige Richter vor laufender Fernsehkameras die Aktivisten als Ökoterroristen bezeichnet. Also der Richter, der eigentlich neutral zu sein hat. An dem Beispiel wird eben schon deutlich, dass es sich hier um ein politisch motiviertes Verfahren handelt.
All the activists that are part of this court case were not only arrested and spent 5 days in jail, 3 of these people also spent more than a month in prison. Our phones were tapped, we were followed by the police, and we were questioned severely by the police the day of our arrests. So you become more aware of how powerful these animal industries are and to what extent they would go to stop us.
Repression ist eben ist der Versuch, eine Bewegung mundtot zu machen. Genau das Gegenteil darf passieren. Man muss die Repression thematisieren, man muss eben offen damit umgehen und gleichzeitig weiter aktiv bleiben und zeigen, dass es nicht funktioniert, dass man sich als Bewegung mundtot machen lassen kann.
So, the message from corporations and politicians is that we need new terrorism laws, new terrorism powers to go after what they call extremists. The Animal Liberation Front, the Earth Liberation Front, Earth First, Sea Shepherd, groups like this. Increasingly, though, they're moving even beyond what was already an outrageous misuse of terrorism powers to go after groups that don't even break the law, who, at the very worst, are conducting undercover investigations and exposing what happens behind closed doors of factory farms and vivisection labs. But some of the very exclusive tactics that have been used against animal rights activists in the US, specifically targeting undercover investigators, we've seen those same tactics pop up in other countries recently. In Spain, a number of activists were arrested in attempts to link them with underground activity, while their activism has been exclusively confined to exposing what goes on in factory farms. We've seen the same thing in Finland. In Austria, there was a case nearly identical to one in the United States. And I think the important point to note about all of this is that it really shows the danger of this corporate power and unchecked corporate power. Because just as corporations know no international boundaries in their pursuit of profits, they have no international boundaries in the lengths to which they'll go to target activists and to demonize their opposition. Government repression and this corporate repression is happening for a reason. And it's happening because these activists have grown increasingly effective and they've had widespread popular support. I mean, if we look at the environmental movement, for instance, you're not going to meet anyone in this country, or in many other countries, who does not consider themselves an environmentalist. Everyone does. Everyone wants to think that they are doing what's best for the planet. Corporations would like to manipulate that to mean, just go buy this product, buy this specific type of light bulb or this certain type of car, and that's all you have to worry about. Well, these social justice activists are being targeted because they go much further than that. They raise actually a serious critique of our culture, and they're willing to act on it. They're willing to put their bodies on the line, their freedom on the line, and they're willing to do whatever they have to put those beliefs into practice.
Die Hühner verbringen jetzt ihr Leben in Sicherheit auf einem Hof, auf dem sie von verantwortungsbewussten Menschen betreut werden und wo sie nie wieder Angst um ihr Leben haben müssen. Sie werden nie wieder ausgebeutet und sie können dort bis an ihr natürliches Lebensende ein Leben in Freiheit verbringen. Für mich ist Aktivismus ein grundlegender Weg, um soziale Ungerechtigkeiten zu bekämpfen. Ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, etwas anderes zu machen und ich hoffe, dass mehr und mehr Menschen auch den Willen verspüren werden, gegen solche sozialen Ungerechtigkeiten aktiv zu werden und sich einzusetzen und offen dagegen auszusprechen, was momentan in unserer Gesellschaft passiert.
Ich habe den Satz gelesen, Aktivismus ist die Miete, die ich zahle, um auf diesem Planeten zu leben. Ich finde, das trifft es ganz gut. Es gibt so viele schreckliche Dinge, die einfach tagtäglich passieren. Dazu bin ich in einer sehr privilegierten Position als Mensch hier in Europa, dass ich einfach denke, es ist eine Notwendigkeit, direkt einfach zu helfen und auch Veränderungen, die nachhaltig ist, zu bewirken.
The idea behind animal liberation is that we have excluded animals from moral consideration, and that this is really a prejudice, that this is something that in the book I call speciesism. It's not a term that I invented, I took it from Richard Ryder, but that speciesism is in some ways similar to racism. That is, that we build a kind of a moral ideology to justify us being the most important. And so just as the really crude racist of the 18th century said, well, we are superior to Africans in various ways, and so we're justified in capturing them, in selling them as slaves, using them as means to our ends. So although we've got rid of that idea, of course, we still have a somewhat similar idea to another class of beings who also have interests. They're not the same as us, but they have interests as we do. But when you think about it, why should just being a member of a certain species give you a special right to life that being a member of some other species, let's say Pan troglodytes, the chimpanzee, does not give you? That doesn't really make any moral sense. So I use the term person for a being with a certain kind of cognitive capacities, certain kind of awareness of themselves as existing over time. And I think that may bring with it a special kind of moral status that simply being a member of the species Homo sapien doesn't have.
The other animals that we turn into food and turn into clothes, turn into competitors, turn into performers, turn into so-called tools, are unique somebodies, not generic some things. They're not only in the world, they're aware of the world, and they're aware of what happens to them, and what happens to them makes a difference to their life in terms of its duration and its quality. And so in these respects, other animals are just like you and I, just like human beings. We're in the world, aware of the world. What happens to us matters to us. And so it's a simple equation, in a way, to realize that we should not do to them what we would not have done to us. Not turn them into clothes, not turn them into food, not turn them into performers or competitors, not turn them into tools. So when all the dust settles, the idea of animal rights comes to that. And the idea is simple. It's that you don't exist for me, and I don't exist for you. And anytime you reduce me to a piece of utility to advance your aims or your purposes and so on, you violate my rights. I have a right to be treated with respect. I have a right not to be harmed unnecessarily. I have a right not to be killed. If people have cats or dogs, they'll understand clearly what I mean. It's not like when you come home today, your cat or dog is a completely different creature than they were before you left. And it's not like they're going to be a completely different creature tomorrow when you awake. No, they are enduring presences in the world. They not only are alive, they are the subject of a life. They carry this psychological complexity through time with them, which underscores the idea that they retain their identity over time. So it's, again, a matter of our sitting back and understanding that fundamentally they are like us and we are like them.
The idea that it is all right to kill and use animals as long as they don't suffer is problematic in a number of respects. That idea goes back to the 19th century. It goes back to actually the foundation of the animal welfare movement in Britain, because it was the idea of Jeremy Bentham and other people who were leading spokespersons of that movement, that animals didn't care about whether we use them. They only cared about not suffering. They did not have an interest in continued existence. They weren't self-aware. Now, this idea, it reemerges in Peter Singer, because that's Peter Singer's view, basically. Peter takes the position that animals, with the possible exception of the non-human great apes or dolphins, they're not self-aware. They don't have the self-awareness that we have, and therefore they don't have an interest in their lives. They don't care that we use them. They only care about how we use them. Now, I think that that's crazy. I mean, first of all, I think that that's wrong. To say that animals that are sentient, any animal, I don't care what animal it is, to say that any animal that is sentient does not have an interest in continued existence is crazy. It's like saying that beings that have eyes have no interest in seeing. Sentience is a means to the end of continued existence. It is a characteristic which evolves in beings for the purpose, and it serves the purpose of helping them to continue to survive by identifying substances and situations in their environment which are dangerous to them and noxious. I used to use the concept of animal rights until by the late 1990s. It was becoming patently obvious to me that it was meaningless. And it was becoming patently obvious to me because meat producers were talking about animal rights. Once a meat producer is talking about animal rights, you know the concept has become meaningless, right? So I stopped using animal rights because it was meaningless. And I thought, well, what is the concept I'm trying to get people to focus on? And the concept is abolition. I think we should pursue the abolition of exploitation, not the regulation of exploitation. We ought not to spend resources, time, energy, money on larger cages or regulating animal exploitation. We ought to be promoting the abolition of exploitation. And again, I've been on happy farms. I've been in supposedly better slaughterhouses. I mean, I've seen this stuff myself. It doesn't matter whether they had the best lives in the world. Killing an animal so you can eat the animal or you can wear the animal is wrong. You know, and I don't care. I don't care how humanely. I mean, obviously, it's worse to torture them more than to torture them less. But the bottom line is, you know, if I said to you, well, gee, you know, I guess it's okay on that theory for me to sneak into your bedroom tonight while you're sleeping and put a bullet through your head. If I did it right, you wouldn't know what hit you. You wouldn't suffer at all. You would just be dead. Would that be okay? Well, most people would say no. Why? You're not suffering. Well, because I've got a life. And the answer is, that's right, you've got a life. So do they.
Ich bin hier schon, seitdem ich denken kann, auf dem Hof. Also ich bin hier geboren. Habe gesehen, wie meine Eltern hier Landwirtschaft machen. Habe dann auch jahrelang hier Landwirtschaft gemacht. Erst so, wie meine Eltern das gemacht haben. Dann habe ich 20 Jahre lang biologisch bewirtschaftet. Aber vor 10 Jahren habe ich beschlossen, diese Art der Landwirtschaft nicht mehr weiterzumachen. Also bin dann über Umwegen dazu gekommen, den Hof hier weiter zu bewirtschaften, zu betreiben als Kuhartenheim oder Lebenshof für Tiere.
Es sind ganz unterschiedliche Geschichten. Eine Kuh kommt aus einem Tierversuch, die war 4 Jahre im Tierversuch, die hatte ein riesengroßes Loch im Bauch, aus dem Panseninhalt herausgenommen wurde, um Futtermittel, Hochleistungsfutter zu testen. Eine Kuh ist uns ganz aktuell im Sommer zugelaufen, die ist von einem Nachbarhof abgehauen. Hat sich auf eine unserer Flächen gestellt. Wir haben sie da entdeckt und gemerkt, die ist hochträchtig. Und da war das natürlich klar, dass wir die Kuh nicht zurückgeben. Und 2 Tage später ist auch ein Kälbchen geboren. Also es ist sehr unterschiedlich. Die kommen aus dem Tierversuch. An denen sind Operationsmethoden probiert worden, erprobt worden. Und die sind seit 2 Jahren hier und die haben sich super gemacht. Erna und Else. Eine Geschichte, das war die mit der, wie hieß sie noch? Cecile, erzähl mal.
Cecile war eine junge Frau, die wollte eine Ausbildung machen, konnte es aber überhaupt nicht verstehen, dass dann immer wieder die Kühe, wenn sie dann keine Leistung mehr brachten, geschlachtet werden mussten. Und eines Tages sagte ich dann zu ihr, so die Kuh, ich habe den Namen vergessen, die wird morgen geschlachtet. Warum wird die Kuh morgen geschlachtet? Ja, aus dem und dem Grund. Wir brauchen sie nicht mehr, sie kostet uns jetzt nur noch Geld und jetzt gibt keine gute Milch mehr, sie muss jetzt halt geschlachtet werden, sie muss weg. Das konnte sie überhaupt nicht verstehen. Nein, doch die Kuh nicht, die muss hier bleiben. Ich sagte, nein, das geht nicht. Kommt überhaupt nicht in Frage, sie wird morgen geschlachtet, Punkt. Ich bin der Chef und ich entscheide nun, dass sie morgen geschlachtet wird. So, und dann ist diese Cecile mit ihrer Blockflöte abends in den Stall gegangen und hat die ganze Nacht bei der Kuh gesessen und hat Blockflöte gespielt. Musik, hat ihr Lieder vorgeflötet. Und am nächsten Morgen, nach dem Frühstück, sind wir dann mit der Kuh zum Schlachter gefahren.
hier im Nachbardorf, war so ein Dorfschlachter. Und da ist sie dann mit ihrer Blockflinte dabei gewesen, wie die Kuh aus dem Hänger in den Schlachtraum geführt wurde. Und so lange, bis dann der Schlachter mit dem Bolzenschussgerät kam und diese Kuh getötet hat. So lange wurde ihr dann Blockflötenmusik vorgespielt. Ja, früher musste ich ja einfach das ausblenden, nicht? Dass ich sie gerne mochte. Das ging einfach gar nicht anders. Ich wollte Geld verdienen, aber ich musste Geld verdienen. Und jetzt sind wir schon, ja, Kameraden. Man freut sich, man unterhält sich, man redet mit denen. Man redet mit einer Kuh genauso wie mit einem Schwein oder mit einer Katze oder mit einem Hund. Da sehe ich überhaupt gar keinen Unterschied. Die sind irgendwie haben alle ihre Qualitäten. Freuen sich, wenn ich mich mit denen unterhalte. Erzählen mir auch was. Das ist irgendwie ein ganz tolles Zusammenleben. Ja, aber kein Mensch kriegt es mit und kein Mensch weiß es, dieses Leid.
Ja.
Diese Kuh ist 9 Monate schwanger, genauso wie eine Frau. Freut sich irgendwann so, dass es dann endlich zur Geburt kommt. Ist schon ganz gespannt. Ist das Mädchen, ist das ein Junge, ich weiß nicht was. Und dann ist diese Geburt, das ist also auch verdammt anstrengend. Das geht ja auch nicht einfach nur mal so. Dann ist das endlich geschafft. Das Kind, das Baby ist da und schwuppdiwupp wird's weggenommen. Und die Kuh leidet mit Sicherheit genauso wie eine Frau leiden würde, wenn man ihr Baby wegnimmt. Und das wird komplett verdrängt, verschwiegen.
Man begreift erst dann im Zusammenleben mit den Tieren, wie unterschiedlich jedes einzelne Tier ist und was sie an Bedürfnissen haben. Und wenn dann die Agrarlobby behauptet, eine Kuh ist glücklich, wenn sie oder ein Huhn auf so und so viel Platz steht, dann können wir einfach hier zeigen, dass es die große Lüge ist. Ne? Und wenn wir die Tiere in Ruhe lassen, die brauchen uns auch nicht, dann stellen wir fest, dass sie Freundschaften pflegen. Kühe zum Beispiel leben eine lebenslange Freundschaft. Da gibt es bestimmte Rituale, Leckverhalten. Das ist ganz, ganz wichtig für die, wie sie sich unterscheiden. Es ist oft auch sehr menschlich. Es gibt Tiere, die freunden sich nicht an, die gehen sich aus dem Weg. Es gibt intelligente Tiere, es gibt wie unser Ochse Martin zum Beispiel, der ist ein bisschen schluffig drauf, der ist immer so zuletzt, der findet so den Anschluss nicht und das ist interessant. Also einfach zu sehen, es sind nicht Tiere oder Gruppen von Tieren, sondern es sind einzelne Wesen, die sehr unterschiedlich sind, wie wir Menschen eben auch verschieden sind.
Also als du angefangen hast, vegan zu werden, haben wir uns erst Sorgen gemacht, Papa und ich. Aber mit der Zeit haben wir gesehen, dass du dich sehr gesund ernährst. Wir haben uns da eingefunden und mittlerweile fangen Papa und ich auch an, viel weniger Milchprodukte zu essen, weil wir uns auch dafür interessiert haben und uns damit beschäftigt haben über dein veganes Leben.
Ja, für mich war das immer ganz schlimm, so am Tisch zu sitzen und vor allem, als ich gerade Vegetarierin geworden bin oder nachher vegan, weil es dann bei mir so Klick gemacht hat und ich dachte so, boah, das kann ja nicht sein, dass dann meine eigene Familie das noch ist und ich daneben sitze und dann habe ich das immer kaum ausgehalten und dann natürlich versucht, euch zu überreden oder zu überzeugen und ja, nachher habe ich einfach versucht, so meine vegane Lebensweise euch vorzuleben und ja, so, ihr habt dann ja dadurch gemerkt, dass es auch anders geht und habt euch dann dadurch auch so ein bisschen umgestellt.
Fleisch essen ist auch eine Sucht. Man hat sich daran gewöhnt. Oder die Leute haben sich daran gewöhnt und ja, es ist schwierig, wenn man das nicht will, dann ist das auch schwer.
Es ist schwierig, wenn man es gar nicht anders gewohnt war, wenn man so erzogen worden ist und über viele Jahre ganz normal, wie alle anderen Menschen auch, Fleisch gegessen hat.
Es wurde ohne schlechtes Gewissen zu haben.
Ohne nachzudenken.
Weil man hat das ja als kleines Kind schon vorgesetzt bekommen.
Most of us are putting dead animals in our mouths and bodies from the moment we're weaned. And most of us are conditioned never to stop and question and think about what or whom we're putting in our mouths and bodies. Carnism is the invisible belief system that conditions us to eat certain animals. Carnism is essentially the opposite of veganism. We tend to label only those belief systems that fall outside of the norm or the dominant belief system or ideology. When eating animals is not a necessity for survival, which is the case in much of the world today, not all of the world, but in much of the world today, then it is a choice, and choices always stem from beliefs. Now, carnism is a special kind of belief system or ideology. It's a dominant ideology. That means it's invisible, it's entrenched, it shapes norms, laws, beliefs, behaviors, etc. And it's also a violent ideology. It's literally organized around violence. Meat cannot be procured without killing. And dominant violent ideologies such as carnism need to use a set of social and psychological defense mechanisms to enable humane people to participate in inhumane practices without fully realizing what they're doing. In other words, carnism teaches us how not to think and feel. If we were sitting down and told that we were eating meat that came from a golden retriever, chances are we couldn't help but think of the living animal, and we couldn't help but feel disgusted. And yet, when we believe that we're eating the flesh of a cow, for instance, we likely have no thought of the living animal and feel no disgust. And when we're not aware of the reality of our meat and of our authentic thoughts and feelings about our meat, then we are also not aware that we have a choice, that we are making a choice every time we eat meat and eggs and dairy. And so this gap in our consciousness that carnism creates, it creates this gap in our consciousness, this disconnect, where we're not making the conscious connection between the animal foods on our plate and the living being it once was. It robs us of our ability to make our choices freely, because without awareness, there is no free choice. Ich denke, dass ich mich gesünder ernähre, seit ich vegan geworden bin, weil ich mich von Anfang an sehr mit meiner Ernährung auseinandergesetzt habe und viel bewusster darauf achte, welche Lebensmittel ich konsumiere.
I'm Jack Lindquist. I'm 31 years old, vegan, professional track cyclist. I've always just wanted to go out and ride my bike. It's just a really fun experience for me all the time. I didn't get into racing until after college and after having an office job where I worked in the defense industry, then kind of had a bit of a breakdown of, kind of a moral dilemma of dealing with doing all this horrible stuff, making these horrible machines that kill people. Just wanted to get away from that, and then so I got into bike messengering, and from there I got into bike racing. Before I started track racing, I was really into ultra cycling and endurance cycling. I've moved from the longest possible cycling discipline to track sprint cycling, where instead of riding for hours and days at a time, I ride for 10 seconds or less. I made the long list for the U.S. for the 2012 Olympics. That was spectacular. But then, unfortunately, things didn't go quite the way we wanted. It's still good. I'm still planning on competing in Rio in 2016 for the U.S. So I've got 4 more years to work hard and get faster and stronger. So. I am so active and train so hard that I have to eat a ton of food. Been over this with my nutritionist. I eat in the neighborhood of 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day, and we've gone through and we've done food logs just to see what I'm eating and see if I'm getting enough nutrients and enough of everything. since I eat so much, it's really not too much of an issue that, I have enough variety just because I have so much volume. 2 days a week, I'm in the gym at 8 in the morning for 2 to 3 hours. And then Monday through Friday, I'm on the track for 3 or 4 hours. Saturdays and usually maybe Wednesday or Friday, I'll also be on the road doing a ride for another couple of hours. So, I train sometimes 35, 40, 45 hours a week. When I switched over to being vegan, I noticed that immediately my recovery time went down, my energy levels went up. I was able to eat and feel a lot cleaner all the time. Like, I didn't have that really heavy feeling after a big meal or anything like that. In general, other athletes are pretty accepting about it. Only the ones that I'm friendly with and comfortable with will give me a hard time once in a while about it. I've had people be like, well, you're obviously not getting enough protein, you're deficient in this, this, and this. But I'm not. I've had blood tests done, I've worked with a nutritionist, and I take care of it, and I eat properly, I eat healthy, I eat intelligently. So I don't have those problems. And as all the coaches have said, as long as you're taking care of your diet and your business, then that's your business and you're fine. So I've ended up working with a lot of vegan athletes, and they are competing at every level. I'm not going to say that they're better because they're vegan, but it is not hindering their performance at all. And it's phenomenal now that we're finding athletes switching to veganism, or mostly vegan, for the benefits. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of that. And it's really exciting. Because if athletes can be vegan, then anyone can be vegan, right? They have the most nutritional demands of anyone on Earth.
Animal-based foods are a problem. Not only do they have the protein, they can contribute to cancer, also heart disease, increase in cholesterol levels, and a number of other diseases. But it's not just the protein, it's also the redistribution of other nutrients that occur as a result of consuming animal-based foods. And so what we see in Western countries, and we see this in countries that have high rates of cancer and high rates of heart disease, what we see is that this kind of diet, fairly rich in animal-based foods, is associated with increased rates of these pretty serious diseases. We did a nationwide survey in China of attempting to determine what was causing cancer, for about a dozen different cancers. What was causing cancer to be so high in some counties and much lower in other counties? And so we surveyed a total of 130 villages all over China, measured lots of different things in a total of 6,500 people. And the results that we got was comprehensive, huge amount of data. Standing alone, this is something that's been misunderstood. Standing alone, those findings, those results, are not sufficient, could not be sufficient to justify the things I'm saying. They're supportive of that. It's a very important point. It was an interesting and quite a fascinating study to do that. And so we got some ideas that, for me, when I took that information and combined it with what we were already knowing, and combined it with also some other kinds of information that is of a historical nature already in the scientific literature, you put that together. I said, wow, this is one heck of a story. So we wrote the book, the China study.
So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has position papers on various topics within nutrition, and they have a position paper on vegetarian diets. And the most current one is from 2009, and I looked at all of the research. And their official position is that vegetarian and vegan diets are healthy throughout the life cycle. So from pregnancy through lactation to infants, adolescents, adults, even athletes. That a well-planned vegan diet is totally adequate. And they even go beyond that and say that vegetarians have lower risks of every major chronic disease. So heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, all those. And they say this very clearly within their position paper.
Animal protein, specifically milk protein, has been used most often to demonstrate this effect. But it actually has been shown in human studies to elevate blood cholesterol levels. And when that happens, as cholesterol starts going up, then we start getting these lesions, these pathological lesions in the vessels that ultimately lead to atherosclerosis or heart disease. The whole animal protein question, as opposed to plant protein. We need protein, obviously, but plants have all the protein we need.
I think veganism is very healthy. If we look at all of the major health organizations in the United States, their specifics, maybe heart disease or maybe cancer,
they are all promoting eating a plant-based diet. They say we should eat more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains, more beans, more nuts, more seeds. They're all saying that. None of them are saying that we should ideologically be vegan, but they're saying that we should eat a mostly plant-based diet. And the difference between that and veganism is only a few steps. And so the question would be, are we not getting any nutrients if we totally eliminate the remaining animal products? And the answer, very clearly, is we can get all the nutrients we need just from eating plants. And so that evidence is there. That is clear. And we're now seeing a transition where not only is it adequate, but there are benefits to eating mostly or exclusively plants.
One of the points I was making in the book, not altogether clearly, but hinting at it, is why nutrition has not been told before. Why do we misunderstand nutrition so much? Nutrition is a medical science, I think, but the United States is treated like quackery. When I was learning, in fact, nutrition is the single most important medical discipline of all. So nutrition, good nutrition, is not about preventing future disease. It's about treating existing disease. Now, if you want to know something that's controversial, that's it, because medicine, they claim, the medical world, they claim they're the ones treating disease. They're the ones reversing disease, and they can only do that by specific drugs. No, not true. We can do it far better with that. I'm sure there are specific cases where it's not going to work. Somebody with really advanced cancer, for example, most of the cases probably not going to work. Or people who have some of the advanced diseases, in some cases, too far gone. It might not work, but I would say that for the vast majority of diseases, I would bet my house that will work.
Wenn ich einkaufen gehe, versuche ich auch auf die Herkunft der Produkte zu achten, weil für mich nicht nur Veganismus, sondern auch Umweltschutz eine große Rolle spielt.
I was living at this house with all these people. I said, let's grow our own food, you know. So a few of us started doing it, and the idea was we would grow subsistence for ourselves. And the first year, we had so much extra food. 5 years later, we were at the farmer's market, we grow for ourselves, we all preserve food. And then sometimes when there's extra food, I sell it to People's Food Co-op, or Erin's from Portobello's bought some. This year we made a commitment to start transitioning the farm using veganic practices. Yeah, it's the idea that you're not bringing in any animal manures, planting cover crops a year or 2 years in advance, and tilling that and building that soil. So it takes a lot of planning. We got peas in here, snap peas, snow peas. Right now, a lot of tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. We have potatoes in here that we call it chit-in, where we're growing the sprouts before they go in. Rhubarb. And then what else? Goji and sea berries? Yeah. Goji and sea berries. Last year we had 1 goji berry. And we're a certified organic farm. We can use manures that come from factory farms. And as most of us know, factory farms, the animals are given antibiotics, all kind of chemicals. So that's then coming through into their, the manures. A lot of farmers are using blood meal. We did make the commitment to not use blood meal. Blood meal is basically all the blood from the slaughterhouse floor that's then, they cook it and they dry it and it turns into a powder. Once you start telling people, even meat eaters, when I talk to them about blood meal, and nearly most farmers don't want to talk about it. It doesn't make me feel good knowing that other people are suffering growing my food, so I wanted to do the hard work of growing my own food, and in that I have a newfound respect for the food I eat at the end of the day. To me, vegetables, because I love vegetables, I love eating vegetables. You know, vegetables I think have always been my main course. I'll have the tofu, the tempeh on the side, but vegetables is always, I've just always loved it. And yeah, getting away from a lot of the processed foods I think is really important for people. And maybe that will be reconnecting as they reconnect with the soil and have relationships with the food they grow. Maybe they'll start getting away from what I call Walmart food.
Die Produktion unter Anführungsstrichen von 65 Milliarden Nutztieren pro Jahr hat sehr massive Konsequenzen auf die Ökologie. Es ist zum Beispiel der mit Abstand größte Flächenverbraucher der Erde. 2/3 aller von Menschen genutzten Flächen sind nur für die Tierhaltung. Also sind Weideflächen und Futtermittelanbauflächen. 2/3 aller von Menschen genutzten Flächen sind nur dafür da. Man muss sich überlegen, man braucht ja enorme Mengen an Futtermittel, viel mehr als würden wir die Pflanzen direkt konsumieren. Also wenn wir Menschen Pflanzen essen, dann ist es weitaus effizienter, als wenn wir vorher die Pflanzen an Tiere verfüttern. Denn was machen Tiere, bevor wir die Tiere essen? Sie verbrauchen im globalen Schnitt so ca. 7 Kalorien an pflanzlichen Lebensmitteln und produzieren dann eine einzige Kalorie und der Rest geht verloren. Also, und damit sind natürlich die Flächen, die wir brauchen für den Futtermittelanbau viel größer, als wenn wir uns direkt von den Pflanzen ernähren.
All life on Earth is minutely adapted and attuned and evolved to a very stable climate, which we've had for the last few thousand years. And this process of adaptation to climate, adaptation to anything, is very slow in plants and animals. And so big changes are going to kill off lots of plants and animals. And the other thing is, it'll not only kill off plants and animals, it will reduce agricultural yield, so it will decrease the food supply. Farming is above all dependent on weather and climate. It's the only sector which is largely outside, some in greenhouses, but not much on a world scale. And so it depends on a stable climate. Climate change does entirely the wrong thing. It makes the climate more variable, more extremes, some places wetter, some places drier. And the agricultural sector cannot keep up with these huge and very sudden changes.
Wenn man die Massentierhaltung, die Nutztierhaltung aus Klimaschutzsicht betrachtet, dann gibt es einmal diese berühmte Studie der FAO, der UNO-Landwirtschaftsorganisation aus dem Jahr 2006, Livestock's Long Shadow, wo die FAO eben gesagt hat, die Nutztierhaltung trägt zu 18% am globalen Klimawandel bei. 18%, das ist mehr als der gesamte weltweite Verkehr, also alle Autos, Flugzeuge, Schiffe, Züge und so weiter zusammen. Das ist schon mal sehr beträchtlich, also 18%. Dann gibt es natürlich auch andere Studien, die diesen Beitrag höher schätzen. Es gibt auch Faktoren, die zum Beispiel nicht berücksichtigt worden sind in der FAO-Studie. FAO-Studie misst nur Emissionen, also das, was wir quasi in die Atmosphäre entlassen. Und wenn ich diese Flächen nicht mehr besetzen würde durch die Nutztierhaltung, dann hätte ich die Chance, dass dort beispielsweise natürliche Vegetation wieder wachsen könnte. Und dieses Nachwachsen von Wäldern oder von natürlicher Vegetation würde wie ein Schwamm CO2 aus der Atmosphäre aufnehmen. Das heißt, ich hätte nicht nur den Wegfall der Emissionen aus der Tierhaltung, sondern auch den Effekt, dass die nachwachsende Vegetation das Klima entlasten würde. Ich bin überzeugt, dass wir in Zukunft diese Form der Nutztierhaltung, die wir jetzt betreiben, indem wir da Getreide und Soja anbauen, an Tiere verfüttern, einen großen Teil der Kalorien verlieren und dann einen kleinen Teil der Kalorien essen als Tierprodukt, dass wir dieses verschwenderische System nicht aufrechterhalten können. Aus Welternährungsgründen, auch aus ökologischen Gründen. Das ist viel zu flächenintensiv. Wir brauchen eines Tages die Flächen vielleicht für andere Zwecke. Wir müssen vielleicht eines Tages, wenn wir kein Erdöl mehr haben, unseren Treibstoff oder unsere Kunststoffe auf landwirtschaftlichen Flächen anbauen. Und dann müssen wir viel effizienter mit den Flächen umgehen. Dann können wir uns diese Verschwendung nicht mehr leisten. Oder die riesen Wasserverschwendung, Wasserverschmutzung, Regenwaldzerstörung, Klimawandel, alles was die Nutztierhaltung bedingt, Verlust von Artenvielfalt. Das sind alles Dinge, die wir in der Form nicht aufrechterhalten können.
Die Tiere in der Massentierhaltung werden viel mit Antibiotika behandelt. Die Antibiotika haben auch nicht nur, dass sie Bakterien bekämpfen, haben sie auch eine Wirkung als Wachstumsbeschleuniger und deswegen werden sie sehr stark eingesetzt. Und das führt natürlich dazu, dass viele dieser Bakterien resistent werden. Das macht uns auch in der menschlichen Behandlung Probleme, denn wir nutzen zum Teil die gleichen Antibiotika auch bei der Behandlung der menschlichen Krankheiten und es können gar nicht so viele Antibiotika entwickelt und neu entdeckt werden, wie eigentlich gebraucht werden. Die Tiere sind sehr empfindlich, weil sie sehr geschützt aufwachsen, kann sich ihr Immunsystem nicht gut entwickeln und deswegen sind sie auch sehr anfällig für Krankheiten. Es ist also ein Kreislauf, der sich in den Schwanz beißt.
Und sie müssen vor Infektionen geschützt werden. Und deswegen wird alles kontrolliert, was in so eine Tierfabrik hineingeht. Das nennt man Biosicherheit und das ist unglaublich teuer. Aber es wird wenig kontrolliert, was aus der Tierfabrik hinauskommt. Beispielsweise Schweinegrippe, Vogelgrippe, das ist auch unglaublich teuer. Aber das zahlt der Steuerzahler und der Patient. Wir haben erst vor 2 Jahren eine Riesenmenge Schweinegrippe-Impfstoff gelagert, öffentlich bezahlt und nachher weggeschmissen, weil wir es Gott sei Dank nicht gebraucht haben. Aber allein die Angst davor. Die Welttiergesundheitsorganisation sagt, dass 60% der Pathogene, der Keime, der Krankheitskeime, die uns betreffen können, direkt übertragbar sind von Tier auf den Menschen. Und 75% stammen von den Tieren. Also da droht eine riesige Gefahr für die Gesundheit, die wir noch gar nicht richtig erfasst haben. Ein Vorurteil war immer, dass ich mich nicht gesund genug ernähre, wobei man ja alle Nährstoffe auch durch rein pflanzliche Ernährung aufnehmen kann. Was ich sonst noch immer zu hören bekommen habe, war, dass Veganer ja gar nichts mehr essen können, aber man kann eigentlich alle traditionellen Gerichte auch vegan zubereiten.
I started working in kitchens when I was about 17 years old. I started working at the Keg Steakhouse as a dishwasher. And I got promoted to salad bartender, and then quickly demoted back to dishwasher because I was pretty incompetent. But I loved the kitchen, I loved working in kitchens, and I loved cooking. So this was in Seattle where I got my start and moved around from restaurant to restaurant, trying to get experience, trying to always get to like a better restaurant. And I felt confident enough to open up my own restaurant, doing new French cuisine. And yeah, that restaurant looked a lot different than this one. I served foie gras. I served veal. Obviously, there was somewhere along the line where I started to get uncomfortable with my own menu and kind of uncomfortable with the exclusivity of fine dining. And so after a while and doing some soul searching, I started to realize that I couldn't ethically ledger what I was doing anymore. I went and shut down the restaurant and moved to Portland and retired from cooking. I remember I was eating a pizza. It was like some, delivery crummy pizza that was like extra meat toppings and all the extra cheese toppings. So I'm eating it, and I started to think about what was going on with what I was eating, and I couldn't escape it. And it was just going through my mind. Like I was seeing in my mind like whole cows going into giant meat grinders, like in The Wall or something, And I went outside and I threw up. I threw it all up, and that purging was transformative. It was like. As I was retching, it was like a kind of an awakening moment, and I went vegan right then. And but I figured I was done with my culinary career. I didn't know anything about vegan restaurants or vegan cooking or. Nice organ asparagus. Fiddlehead ferns. These are cool. And it's also really nice wild salad mix. This is really good. This is wild watercress. Very spicy. We have this nice arugula. That's from Fancy Roots Farm. Handmade pasta we do, the Strozza Prezzi. Really nice kale. It's beautiful. We make the spaghetti in-house. We have a pasta machine to make the spaghetti. It's like a spaghettini. We just got on the Eater PDX blog's top, or the 38 essential restaurants in Portland, which I was really excited about because the restaurants that are on that are amazing. Not vegan, but I still professionally admire them. We use as much local produce as we can. We prepare the things very simply and we serve them very simply. We try not to be too fussy about our plating. I don't want to eat food that has pesticides and herbicides and poisons on it. I don't want to have food that's, I want to have food that I feel like is safe for me and wholesome for me to serve to my customers. It feels really good to have that relationship with the farmer, to be able to we get a list that says, this is what we have available. We put it on a board on our wall there where our produce is coming from. It's a huge point of pride for us that we're adaptable enough and that we have enough in our holster to be able to pull out a new dish. My relationship to food changed a lot after I went vegan. I mean, first of all, I stopped looking at animals as food and animal products as food, so that was an obvious huge change. But that's remarkable for me because I did butchery. I used to slaughter animals in the kitchen. Used to slaughter rabbits and things like that. So that was a huge change for me. And the catalyst for all that change was all the way back in Florida when I had a restaurant serving foie gras and stuff, because I just went into the transition of working in a restaurant to owning a restaurant and just doing what I was taught and shown. But what really happens is that when you own your own business and you're responsible for purchasing, producing, and selling a product, and unless you're completely soulless, I mean, you're going to have a couple of concerns about what you are ultimately responsible for. Now you're no longer just a foot soldier in the kitchen. Now you're the boss, and you have to care about what you're doing. So when you take all that into consideration, then it becomes very real, and because it's your name on the bottom line.
I think in the early 2000s, I saw a BBC documentary on chocolate and the slavery involved in the chocolate industry. And obviously I was horrified by what was going on, and that I consider myself to be an educated person, and yet I knew nothing about this issue. But they interviewed one of the slaves who actually escaped from one of these farms. And he was asked by the interviewer, what would you say to a Westerner who eats chocolate? And he said, when you're eating chocolate, you're biting into my suffering, you're biting into my flesh. Something to that effect. And as a vegan, I thought, oh my God, that's the same thing a non-human animal would say about eating them. To me, after learning about all these other issues, I realized that it kind of seemed incorrect to say that we had the most compassionate diet. If we're consuming fruits and vegetables where farm workers are dying in the fields to get on our tables, that isn't necessarily compassionate either. If we're eating chocolate, it may be free from animal suffering, well, non-human animal suffering, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's free of any suffering if you consider that children or workers in general in West Africa are beaten if they aren't moving fast enough, if they're trying to escape, that they're killed. How is that compassionate? And so that we needed to open and widen our circle of compassion, which is something we always want other people to do, is to widen their circle of compassion to include animals. It seemed like we needed to widen our circle of compassion for the human animal, and recognize that we had to also make positive impacts on the other parts of the world with our food choices.
It's important to recognize that slaughterhouse workers and meat packers, who are clearly on the front lines of the slaughtering of animals, are not bad people or are not sick people, for instance. They are human beings, individuals who are also victims of animal agribusiness in many ways. These are people who are arguably not attracted to this job because they're attracted to violence toward animals. In the United States, many of them are non-English speaking immigrants, documented and undocumented, who can't advocate for their rights, who work in a highly dangerous, death-saturated environment, and not surprisingly have been found to have high rates of addictions and post-traumatic stress. People on the killing fields, people in wars, people in zones of violence inevitably become desensitized to that violence. How could you not, as a coping mechanism?
We're making new decisions every day. Like right now, we just got a new freezer because we're going to start making our own vegan butter. So we're going to stop using palm oil butter because it's not enough that we're just vegan. And you know, why are we shipping palm oil all the way from all over the world that's deforesting jungles and destroying orangutan habitat? You know, like, how am I calling myself vegan and doing that? You know, so we have, you know, or how am I calling myself a good person or an environmentalist? You know, so I'm responsible for what I serve my customers, so I have to buy the right things. And that means a little bit extra work in order to make it good and make it wholesome and make it ethical. So be it.
So as a vegan, everybody always asks where I get my protein, especially being an athlete. Everyone has this misconception that, you know, if you don't eat meat, you're never going to get enough protein, you're going to shrivel up and die. But it's, I mean, I don't have a problem. I do get a hard time from a lot of other track sprinters because track sprinters generally have a reputation of being, you know, weightlifters who also cycle. So they always give me a hard time, like, oh, you'd be faster if you ate more protein, ate meat, you know? You don't get enough protein. So it's always a little frustrating, but you know, I don't seem to have too much of a problem.
Ich erinnere, vor Monaten hat uns ein Bauer geschrieben, dass er nicht weiß, wie lange er das noch aushält. Und das ist natürlich auch noch eine Möglichkeit, Bauern beim Ausstieg zu helfen und ihnen möglicherweise bei der Umstellung zu helfen. Also vielleicht das zu machen, was wir machen und ein Konzept anzubieten, wie es möglich ist.